Right, so hello everyone, welcome to Week of Web. In this series, we will be diving into full stack web development where we learn each concept every day. So today is the fourth day of this week and we will be learning about document object model. So to learn document object model, the prerequisite is JavaScript, which we learned in the previous session. So now let us move ahead. So what is document object model? It is basically a structured representation of your HTML document where we have all the tags defined in our HTML. This basically creates an object of each element and then keeps it nested under each other. This way, we could access this object in JavaScript and then manipulate them as we want. So DOM is object oriented. That means each node has its own property and there are methods as well that we can use to make changes to our elements or to add elements or to also remove elements. So now we have a few files for you which will work as a start. If you are trying along with this session, you could use it. So we have the document object model in. So if you remember HTML file, so in that HTML file, the whole file is one document, and that document has the root element as the HTML tag. Inside HTML tag, we have a head and a body, and then we have the sub element nested inside body as well as head. So for example, in head we have a title tag, and then the title tag has some title in it. So we can call it my title over here. Similarly, in body, we have an anchor tag which has some attribute called href. So this href contains the link to which is the content of that anchor tag. So the text is my link over here. Similarly, we can have a heading tag as well, and the content inside the heading tag is my header. So, so let me show this to you in our document itself. So first of all, I'll open VS Code, and in VS Code, I'll create a new project itself. So I'll open a file, a folder, first of all, and I'll create a new folder over here and write DOM tutorial. I'll open this folder in VS Code. In this, then we'll create a file called HTML. So let's call it dom.html. And similarly, we'll have CSS as well for us. So I'll create another file called dom.css. And to write our JavaScript code, we'll also need a JavaScript file as well. So I'll create another file called dom.js. So now remember the starter code I sent you the link for. So let us open that up. Here I have all the code pre-written for us, which we'll be using in this session. So let us copy the CSS first. And then also we'll copy the HTML. And now, like I explained, this HTML file will have one HTML tag inside which we'll have two tags, which are the head tag and the body tag. So if I close this and show, you'll see that head is, we are having head tag and a body tag. So inside head tag, we have all the meta information, and we also have something called title. So all these elements will have their own objects created in JavaScript in our document object model. And then we have body tag as well. Similarly, for body tag, all the elements inside body tag will have their own objects created, and this object will be nested in the body object. And that's why the whole nested structure is created here. The hierarchy is created over here like this. So to correct our link over here, so I'll rename this dom.css because we use dom.css over here, and I'll save it. So on clicking I'm clicking, I'm holding control and then clicking on this. So it will take me to this file. So if this is happening, that means the file is correctly written over here. Now, similarly, we have CSS written here. Each CSS is basically having selectors for each other. So let's say I have a container over here. So this container is actually referring to the container on the body. So this container, and this is stored in the style attribute. So all the CSS is stored in the style attribute. So now if I open this in our live server, like I told earlier, we have an extension called live server. If we go to extensions in VS Code and type live server, yes, this is the tool we are using here. What this basically does is as soon as we save the page, it will reload the page automatically. So we'll open this in live server. So I'll right click on HTML file and I'll click open with live server. This should open me our, our app which we are creating. So I'll disable the dark mode extension I have in the Chrome. And now if I put it, I'll put this side by side so that everything is visible to us. Now, if now I'll explain how our DOM structure actually works in JavaScript. So I'll open the console here. So to open console, what I'll do is I'll press Control Shift and J. It should open the console here, and it is opening on the right hand side. I would like it on the left, on the bottom side. On this three dots, and I'll click on this icon, which will bring it to the bottom. And this will bring us our to-do list application, which we made earlier with the background effects removed, so that all the changes we make here are actually visible. Now, to see the document object model built in JavaScript, we'll use the command console.dir, and in parentheses, we'll give document. So this should give us a document inside our console. So let us do that. So if I type document here as well, it should display me all the document structure created. So this is the HTML tag, this is the body tag, and all the HTML is displayed here like this. But to display the actual document, we will be using the directory itself. So to view that, I'll put this document over here. All right, for some reason it is not working today. Let us test it out with our console.log, and I'll try to select an object out of this document. All right. I guess our JS file is not correctly linked. So I'll try to test that out first. So I'll put alert and I'll put hi over here. So it should give me an hi alert on the top, which is not working. That means our DOM file, HTML file does not include this JS file itself. So that what we will do is we'll go to the bottom of our body tag and we'll include this script. And I'll write dom.js. If I say save, it will show the alert which I prompted over here. So now our console.log should work. So I'll try input the whole directory of document. It should give me something like this. So basically all the properties of our website or our application are displayed over here. So there may be all the children applicants of the document. There is the CSS compatibility mode. We have a body. Inside body, we have all the objects inside the body. All those things are declared over here. So to check all the objects, we could use something called we log out all the elements document. So let's say some useful information for us out of here is the domain name. So what we could do is we could use document, and then using the dot operator we can access all the children elements of it. So to, let's say we need to access domain. And if I save, I'll comment this out so that it will be easier for us to view. And yes, the domain is 127 .0.0.1, and that is correctly displayed over here. Let's say I want to see the URL, the complete URL itself of the application. Then I could see that the complete URL is displayed here. Like this, all the properties of our document element could be displayed. Again, to see if what is our title, we could use the title operator. Using dot operator, we could access the title document. So title is also displayed here. So this accessing is fine, but we need, let's say we need to change the title of our document after the HTML has been loaded. So what we could do is we could manipulate it as well. So this part is called manipulation, where we are changing the properties of our document object model. So to change the property, what we could do is we could select element and then we could redefine its value. So let's say I'm typing DOM manipulation over here. And I'm saving. Now, if you notice, the title has been changed. And if I console log it again, it will also give me the correct output. So this was before I made the change, and this is after I made the change. And that's how we make changes in our document object model. And that similarly, all these properties are changed in the actual HTML as well. Now, if I have to select the whole head part uh, of our whole document, then what we could do is we could just type head, and it will give us all the properties inside our head tag, all the elements inside our head tag. Similarly, it will give us for the body as well. So like this, we could see what are properties inside body, and like this, we could select them. And there is another interesting property which our document has, is called all. So what this all does is it will create a document object of all the elements inside our document, and then it will represent them in an array. So if I see over here, if I keep my mouse over here, it will highlight what property it is. So if I want to select go for a run, then I could select it somewhat like this, and then the element is the 18th element. So how to access our array, like we discussed in our JavaScript session, we could just use the square brackets to access the element. So our element was 18th element, so let us do that. And when I save, it will return me the list which has the go for run and the delete element as well. The delete element is over here. To make it look clearly, so that we don't have to scroll through it, I'll put this width as max width. Now it is adjusted properly. So now this is over here. So this is the all method, but we are not going to go and check for the elements over here like this, right? We can't do that every time and then access our elements. So to do that, to select our properties inside our document, we have something called selectors. So let us move on to selectors now. So there are various types of selectors. The mainly we use are get element by ID to select IDs, get element by class name to select the classes, and get element by tag name. So I'll show you all of them now. So let's say I want to select the heading of a document. So I'll go to my HTML and I will see how I have selected it. So there is an h1 tag. There is no ID or class. So let us give it some ID. So I'll call it header title. I have one ID here, which will make it easier for us to select this element. So if I have to select it, what I'll do is I'll create one variable and I'll call it header title equal to document dot. Now this is a property of a document itself, and here we could type get element by ID, and then inside this we'll pass on our ID name. If I put header title here, you will notice that it will select the property. And let's console log it now. And I'll put the header title here. Now, if you see, the header title is selected in this part. But let's say I don't want the header title itself. I want the content inside it. So I could pass on the property dot text dot text content. We can put it like that. So on putting this, I'll save, and now it will get me all the text inside it. But let's say we have some properties defined inside our uh, header title. So if I add a span element here, inline element here, and I type get things done, and if I save it, all these elements will be displayed inside it. But let's say we have some CSS written for this, which says display none. What will happen is it will show everything which is there inside our header title, but here get things done is not visible because we have given it the property display none. But we can still access it using text content method over here. So we have text content method here. Now if I check, we have another method which will actually incorporate the CSS properties in it. So the method we have for it is called inner text. So if you see that get things done is not displayed now. And then we have another method which will give us the HTML also, the HTML written inside our content. So let's say the properties are nested here, right? So inside H1 we have a span. So this, let's say we want to access this span instead. So how do we do it? We have another method for it, which is called inner HTML. So now our elements are also displayed over here, and our tags are also displayed here. And we could, and this is stored as a string, so we could manipulate it as well. So let's say I want to manipulate this part, so I can write header title. So if you notice one more thing, that I am not using the same notation which we have here. This is a string, and inside string we can write anything. So inside string I have given this symbol, but for JavaScript this symbol means minus operator, and we don't want that to happen. We want it to be a single variable itself. So that's why we are using this camel case. This case is this type of variable naming is called camel case, where the first element is always small and the rest of the words are capital. And this one is called kebab case, where we have minus in between them to separate the words. Now we are we are manipulating this inner HTML part. So let's select it, and then we could write equal to, let's say I want it to be span. I want to remove display none, let's say, and I want to write, I want to remove that comma as well. So what I'll do is I'll just write get things done, and I'll end the span. Now if I save, it will change the complete header title. So if you noticed it before, so let's say I log it here now. So you may see that this whole thing, this whole string is changed with this string, and that is how we can manipulate this element. So that is all, I guess, we have for get element by ID. So I'll keep that so that we could select it later. So I'll comment everything else. Now we have another type of selector to select classes, of course. We have this HTML tags for selecting, we have the classes for selection, and we have IDs for selection. So this is how the three elements we can select. So now let us select the classes. So if we see our HTML, we have something called task test repeating many times. And when we select it, what should happen? It should not select one, but it should give me all the elements here. All these elements are collected inside an HTML collection, which we could create an analogy for array itself, but that's not exactly an array. It is an HTML collection. And that's why all our array methods, which we discussed, like for each, filter, map, in our last session, those won't work here. So if I show it in action, let us see this. Now, if you see, it shows the type as HTML collection, and then it shows all the articles, all the to-do list items we have inside it. And then it also returns us the length of the HTML list. So how many do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's it is giving us the length 5. But if you notice, the array starts at 0. So it will be from 0 to 4 instead of 1 to 5. So always notice that length will be 5, but the index will start from 0 and then it will go till n minus 1. Our n is here 5. So that is how we select our classes. So if I show how to make manipulations again, so I can do it like task test, and then I want to select go on a run. So it is 0, index number 0, then 1. So I'll give it as 1. And then inside this, let's say I want to change its font weight. So I want to make it bold. Let's say I want to make it bold. So I could use the operator style over here. It will change all its CSS properties. So if I put style dot font weight, here I'm not using kebab case again. Inside CSS we may use kebab case, but here we are using camel case itself. So I'll put equal to bold. When I save, the item will become bold here. Similarly, let's say I want to add a background to it. So what I'll do is I'll put here as let's say we want to add the background color here. So background color, and then equal to, let's give it a background of some grayish color. So a grayish color would be somewhat like F4, F4, and F4. And if I save it, it will become grayish now. If you notice, it is very light. So yes, that is there. But let's say I want to apply this background color property to all the elements of the list. So if I remove this square bracket dot 1, it won't work. It will give us an error that this property cannot be applied to it, and this style dot background doesn't is not defined for it. Why? Because the element itself is an HTML collection. It is not an HTML element. It is an HTML collection. And we have to iterate to each property to actually select each element. So how to do that? We will comment this line first. And then we can iterate it by using a for loop. So for here dot for each won't work because this is not an array. This is an HTML collection. So all the array methods will not work here. So if I run a for loop, now I can paste this property in here. The only difference here will be that I have to pass the ith element every time. And now if I save, it works like normal, like how we expect it to be, because we are selecting each and every element. So this is one thing notable about HTML action. When we select get element, by ID by class name instead. So ID will return us a unique element. So that's why we are getting only one element every time. But class name will return us an array, or to be precise, an HTML collection, which can then be selected individually using the index numbers. All right. So the another one method to select we have is by get element by tag name. So if I comment this out and let us select um, inside here we have a unique property list. UL is unique to us. So let us select UL now. So to select UL, what we could do is we could just yeah, let's select it directly because using the tag name. So you can put let list equal to document dot get element by tag name, and then I can put UL inside here. Now I could also select the properties inside here like li over here. Also to give you an example, first I would like to show you this one. So if I console log now, you will see I get an HTML collection where I get only one property with the length of one itself. So our whole list is selected, but it is of the property HTML collection. And inside there, the length is only one. So we have only one element inside it. But if we have to select all the elements, the list elements inside it, what we could do is we could just put li over here. And then if I save, I'll get all the li elements here. And inside our li elements, we have all these properties defined. All right. So in this, we have learned three properties now, which is get element by ID, get element by class name, and get elements by tag name. But let's say we need a unified way to access all of them. So for that, we have something called query selector. So if I have to select header title, then I would simply copy this and I'll comment this for now. And instead of get element by ID, I'll just put document.querySelector. And it shall return me the header title. So if I console log the header title, there is some typo element, that's why it is showing me null. Oh yes, the typo here is it doesn't know that which element I'm selecting. Is it an ID? Is it a class name? Or is it a tag name? So what I have done is here I have selected the tag name header title, but I need to select an ID instead. So in CSS, how we select IDs? We select it by using the hash uh, operator or hash selector. So I just have to put hash over here. Now if I save, it will return me the heading tag. Similarly, we can select classes as well. So if I copy this and just replace this with query selector again, it will return me. Okay, I need to log it as well. So I'll log it as text task test. And again, we need to use the selector property. So here, what do we have? To select classes, we use dot operator or dot selector. So I'll put dot over here. And if I save, it shall return me the object I'm looking for, the element I'm looking for. But the problem here is we have task text as so many items over here, but it is returning only the first one to us. And to fix this problem, we have something called query selector all. So if I put all here, then it will return me all the objects like this. And that is how we select the properties. Again, by using query selector, we are assigning this element to this variable, and then this variable would be, then we can perform all these tasks on it. We can manipulate its property. All those things are possible here. Now let us move on to our event listeners. So let us cover event listeners over here now. So basically, let's create a function first of all. So using arrow functions, which we learned earlier, we can create a function. Let's say I need a button to be clicked. So I can add button click function over here, and then I could just put a function over here. So before that, I'll put a function over here. Let's say I want to log button is clicked. So I'll just put button clicked. And of course, to select a button, we need a button as well. So I'll create a button element over here. Let's say I enter it after the list. So I'll put a list over here, and I would just type button over here. Now if I save, I'll get a button over here, and this button could be then given this function, or which could be accessed. So what naturally we used to do is we would add on click method over here. So what on click does is it will just ask for which function needs to be executed. So if I type here button click function, and then save it, on clicking this button, it should return us the. All right, so this button could be what we prefer is we don't prefer the on-click method in our HTML. We don't prefer actually putting any functions in our HTML itself. What we could do instead is we could have all our the functional programming written inside the JavaScript directly. So to do that functional programming, what we do is we have something called event listeners, which listen for events. Like if you press a keyboard button, that will be listened. If you click on a button, it will be listened. If we were to hold on the button, then that would be listened. So to do that, what we have is I'll show how a event listener is added into a to our any element, HTML element. So if I type, let's first select the button. So let button equal to document dot get element, or I will use the query selector method. And then I would add an ID to this so that I could select this item. Now we have the button selected. What could we do with this button? We need to add an event listener to it. So I'll type dot add event listener. And the event listener method takes two properties. First is what should it listen for? So the first one for us is we need to listen for a click on it. And then the second property is what function needs to be implemented. So here I could type button click property. And if I save this, and now if I click the button click will be logged every time. So anything I write inside here could be uh, taken place. And this is how we use event listeners as well. Let's say I want, instead of click, I can use a double click. So on double clicking, it will run the function like this. Or let's say I don't want a button to be clicked every time. I want the keyboard interactions to take. So for that, let's say I can type something over here. First of all, I'll select this input. and let us see how we can select it. So our input button or our input task has the ID task input task. So I'll put input task over here, and that should select our the input task. Now we need to add an event listener to it. So what we could do is we could select it first of all. So input task, and we could add an event listener to it. Let's add keyboard interactions. So I want the key press. Let's say I want the key press to be noted every time. So I'll put key press over here, and then I want the function. Let's use the same function, button clicked itself. I'll put it over here. And now whenever I click, whenever I type something here, it will count the number of times I typed or the number of times I pressed a button. So I typed here some 16 character long things. So I pressed on keyboard 16 times. It took 16 number over here. So that is about event listeners, and that is about DOM manipulation in itself. So let us move back to our slides. We completed selectors. We will learn about creating new elements in our next session, and then we will have event. We learned about event listeners as well. So now we learned all this. Now let us put all this into action. So we were making our to-do list in our previous session. We created our HTML and CSS file. So now if I head back to VS Code, I can close this and I'll open my project, which open our repository which we created earlier. So I'll click on new, and I was using the repository week of web. So here we created a public folder which had index.html and style.css here. So if I show you the application here now, so I'll open it with live server. So this was what we built earlier. So one thing is that let's say we need to change the background. Let's say a user doesn't like leaves at all. He hates leaves. So let's add something, some characteristics to our element. And also we don't, this application doesn't work at all. If we click or do anything, nothing is able to work. So for this, we can write code in JavaScript. So to do that, let us add a JavaScript file to our repository. So I'll name this as app.js. And like the last time, we need to link it to JavaScript as well. We need to link HTML to JavaScript as well. So if I put script source and then I give the path of our file. So I'll give it app.js. By the way, this dot means we are working in the current directory, and our current directory here is public. So every time I type anything over here, let's say I put dot slash over here, it will give me what file needs to be selected over here because we are in the public folder. So I can select tab.js here. And then to test out things whether it is actually working, I could put alert high. And now if I switch back to our website, we'll see this high is shown over here. Now that our JavaScript is linked properly, let us add some functionality to our website. So the functionality we're talking about, we need to change the background. For that, we need the background first, right? So let us get some backgrounds in over here. So I'll open this project in our Windows Explorer, and inside here, I have public written over here. So public, I don't want all the images to be here. I don't like all the images being here. So what I could do is I could create a new folder to make things organized. I'll put this background inside here. And I'll have a few more backgrounds as well. So to get those backgrounds, I'll copy a few background images now. So while working on this series, I have tested out in our separate repository. So I'll copy the background files from there. All right, and the same will be represented here in our VS Code. See, the image folder is created here. It syncs automatically with how we work. So now we have the background files as well. But if we see here, so if I reload this now, you'll see that the background is missing. Why is this missing? Because we changed the path of the file. So if I go to style.css and correct the path now, so I'll put the image folder here and then I'll put one here. And now if I see, it is corrected, right? Now similarly, by we have this body tag, we have the body element where this is its background is being set as this background element. So we have the URL over here, this CSS is over here. So we'll have to change this property every time. But to change this, we'll also need some elements in our HTML. So to do that, we'll add some elements. Now let us try making some elements over here. So first of all, let's create a class for all the elements as our container, as a wrapper for all our elements. So what we'll do is we'll just add one ID. So I'll add, by the way, I'm using Emmet in VS Code, which will, as soon as I type hash, so it will detect it as the ID and it will create all the elements for me automatically. So if I am typing hash background over here, or let's say background selector, and then it shows us Emmet abbreviation over here. And as soon as I press enter, it will create an ID for me with proper syntax. Similarly, I could use this feature to create several elements for me together. So how could I do that? I just use the similarly, I'll create some ID, let's say 1, and I could press star 4. And as soon as I press enter, it will create 4 elements for me. And then I could edit them. So I don't want all it to be division. I want it to be span. I want it to be inline elements. So I'll put span over here. And then I'll add a class also to all of them. So class will be background. And I could remove this. Now we have all the IDs same and IDs are supposed to be unique. So we'll change them as well now. So by doing this, we have created a background selector for us, but nothing is in them. To see them in our HTML, we'll add some numbers to it. And now if we see our website and see all our elements are present over here, 1, 2, 3, 4 are present over here. I don't want it to be here, and I don't want it to be 1, 2, 3, 4 as well. But I'm showing it as 1, 2, 3, 4 to see where it is, where we can see it in our document. So now let's style it and bring it to proper. Let's bring it to a proper way where we want it to be. So I want it to be over here every time, so that it doesn't come in our way when we are creating the list. So let us put all the elements over here. To do that, we could use position absolute, which means that it will take how much we want, what are the let's say x-axis and y-axis it will take from us, and it will take absolute. That means the whole screen's absolute value it will take, and the x and y-axis value, that way it will arrange itself. And what is this element? It is background selector ID. So let us add this into a CSS. So we have background selector here, and the properties we'll add is, first of all, we need to add what, like I said earlier, we need to add our display property, position property. So we have position absolute first of all. And then, like I discussed in earlier our HTML CSS session, these are our span elements. Span elements don't have their own, they can't be edited to have their own height and width. So to change that, we'll add here display inline block, so that it is properly, we can adjust its height and width whenever we want, and then we'll give its x-axis and y-axis. So from top, I want it to be 90%, and then from the left side, I want it to be 90% again. If I save, you can see that all these elements are shifted here like we wanted, but I don't want it to be 1, 2, 3, 4 as well. So what we will do is we will select this class background, and then we'll edit its style. We have all the spans over here. So again, we need to select, make it, we need to adjust its width and position. We'll use display inline block over here. And actually, this is not a span, this is a division element. So we don't need inline block over here. So we'll remove it from here, and then we'll add our class background. And in this, I'll add the first thing, display inline block, so that we can edit this width and height. And then let's define its width and height. So its width will be, let's say 20 pixels, and height will be again 20 pixels. I need it to be a square. And then let's have a border also around it so that they are differentiable. So I'll add border over here. Let's say 1 pixel or 2 pixels. So 2 pixels solid and in gray color. Now if I save and look at our page, it is not selected. Let us see why. We have the ID background selector over here selected properly, and then we have background selector selected properly.
Maybe due to typo there, or it's px, right? The border.
Oh yes, correct, that's pixels. Thank you for that. And now yes, all the elements are over here. Now I will remove 1, 2, 3, 4 from it because now it's visible to us. And I'll remove this alert also, it is annoying a lot. So yeah, and now all our boxes are visible to us. Now let us add some properties to them, these boxes. So we had IDs over here, right, to select each individual element. So let us do that now. So again, I'll select this ID BG1 and I'll replicate it. Or before replicating, I'll just add some background color to it. So why am I using background color over here? It's because I want to know which image I'm selecting. And the best way to do is to actually select their color and show which color are we going to choose. So what I'll do is I'll head back to our folder, and here I'll see what color we have. So I have a tool which will show me all the colors here. It is called Windows Power Toys. So this Power Toys will give us a lot of features, and one of their feature is selecting the color we have. So I want a green color over here. So I'll just select this, and it will copy the color for me now. And if I paste it over here, it will paste it automatically, and we have the green color. And I'll now replicate this because we need color for all of them. And now let us select our image 2 as well. So our image 2, we have the color somewhere over here. And then I'll add this color over here. So now I have to remove one hash from here. Now we have the yellow color over here. And now let us select the red color. And we'll add the red color here. Similarly, we'll add this white color over here. And now if we head back to our website, we'll see all the colors are over here. Now it's time to write JavaScript. Let us select all the elements we are going to change first of all. So what are we going to change? We are going to change the background. So this background is our body. So how do we select body? We'll type, let's say body itself. to document dot body. This will select our body, and then we have other elements for whom we have to create event listeners, because on clicking it, it shows all the event, all it should trigger the events. So we'll add event listeners to it. So let us select all these span elements as well now. So we'll do this again. So again, I'll write it for one element and then I'll copy it so that it's faster for us. Let let us type bg1 itself for this, or let us type button1 equal to document dot query selector, and this I'll select by their IDs, which we created here as bg1. And I'll replicate all of them. I'm using VS Code shortcut key, which is Shift Alt and the down button to replicate all of these items. Now I'll add 2 over here, I'll add 3 over here, and I'll add 4 over here. Now we have all the elements which we are going to change selected. So let us start working with them. So first of all, I'll create functions for them before we make any changes, before we add, because inside our add event listener, we need to add a function as well. So for each of them, I'll create a function so that it will actually be created when I press the event listener, when I trigger the event listener. So I'll call them, let's say I'll add change background as their function name. And for each of them, I'll create one function. So and here, what are we doing? We are changing the background of our body. So we'll select body, and then we'll select its style, because the background property here is our style. We are selecting the CSS of our element, and then we need to change the URL. So we'll take this as well. And inside CSS, we are changing the background property. So let us select that as well. Or instead of background, we're changing the background image property. So we'll take background image here. And then I'll add the URL property in this. And since you see there is one error over here, what is the error? I can't use the double quotes inside the double quotes. So to fix that, I could actually use single quotes outside, and that should fix a problem. Yes, now we can, inside single quotes, we can use double quotes, and it knows which string is ending where. And inside this, we have the first, on clicking the first elements, let's say, it will switch to background one. And then similarly, I could replicate this functionality. So I'll make 4 copies of it, and then I'll change the properties. Actually, I need to select each one every time. So 2, 3, and 4. Similarly here as well, 2, 3, and 4. Now all the functionality which we need to bring is over here, but we need to trigger these functions as well. So for that, we'll add event listeners. So I'll take this and I'll add event listener to this. So our button one, we'll add event listener to it. And for button one, we'll have a click event listener. And then we'll execute the function change background one. And this will then, on clicking this button, we'll change the background to the respective code we have written. Similarly for this, we'll add 2, 3, and 4. Here also 2, 3, and 4. Now if we head back to our website and I reload it and I click this, it will change the background. But it doesn't look so much fun as of now. So let us add some transition properties to it. So let us head back to our CSS and let us add transition to it. And I want it to transition in 0.5 seconds. So what will happen is it will slowly transition from one to another And also another problem I notice here is I don't know whether these are clickable. So usually what we have on links, we have a pointer cursor over there. So let us add that pointer cursor also to them. So I'll go to the background property, and there I'll add the cursor as pointer. So now if you notice, our cursor is changing whenever we go over there, so that we know it's clickable. And when we change elements, it is transitioning smoothly. So the first time they will load the image, and then it will transition from one to another. And now that we have implemented this functionality, it is a good time to save our version. So what we'll do is we'll go to our Git and we'll make a version out of it. And always make sure that you add the message in very descriptive way, so that you know what history you made at that time. So added background switcher over here, and then I'll type my password in, and then it will make a history out of this. And then I want all of you to access this. So what I'll do is I'll upload it to GitHub by using git push command. All right, so there were some changes made to my repository earlier. So what I have to do is I have to first pull them before I could actually push my changes to it. So I'll go to GitHub first of all, and I'll check what changes were made. So there were two changes made. So I need to pull them first. Here, if we go into commit history, we can see that there were two pull request merge. So we need to incorporate that in our local history as well. And to do that, we can just type git pull, and it will create some conflicts for us. So let us learn how to fix git conflicts as well. So now it will say we have some conflict. So VS Code has it covered for us as over here as well. It will show what all files have conflicts, and then we can select this and see the differences between each file. All right, so VS Code is not detecting conflicts over here for some reason now. Yes, here we have. It is showing what are the changes we made, that is the current changes over here, and what are the changes that previously we have. So here we added transition property also. We want this property to be incorporated here. So what we will do is we'll select that this needs to be added here. So I'll remove this part, and the problem shall be fixed. Let us check for any other merge conflicts now. So inside our HTML, we don't have any changes. It's correct. And over here also, we don't have anything. And now we could commit these changes. We could commit these changes over here. There are some other conflicts as well. So let us see what conflicts do we have. All right. Now, if I put git push over here, it is saying again we are having some problems. It is not able to push it because we need to pull it first. The difference we have is here, we haven't committed our changes over here. So if we put git status over here, you'll see that this file is modified, but it is not in a staging area. So what we'll do is we'll first add this to a staging area, and then if now it will commit it properly. And now the commit has performed clearly we could push it. So what I did here is that always there is one always thing we should do is before working on a repository, there is an important fact that we should always pull the changes which were made to the repository in our GitHub, that is to the cloud. In GitHub, all our code is made stored online, and we could merge anyone's changes to a repository. So what happened here is that my repository was at this stage where I made changes last time. But then what happened is we had these two changes as well, these many changes as well. And these changes were not there in my local repository, in my computer. But I started working already. So what happened is what these changes were not there in my repository, but I added more changes to it. So now Git doesn't know which changes should it actually take, whether it should remove all this or whether it should add new feature and just forget about this. It should just remove all these changes. That's why before merging the changes, it asked us whether which changes do we want to keep. So what I did was I went to a code, and then there was one transition property which was creating conflict, which wasn't available in the previous version. So I told him that no, we need this transition property, don't remove it for us. And that is how now then all the conflicts are removed, and then we had our repositories matching with each other. So our this local repository was matching with our GitHub's repository. All these changes were incorporated, and that is how all the states of our local repository and the remote repository were at the same place. And we that is how we removed the conflict between the two repositories. So that was another tutorial with Git and GitHub as well. And now if you notice, all our changes are available here. And you could access this code. Uh, you could access this code by going to my profile and then checking for week of web. All the changes are available here. So one more time, let me show what we did. We added this to-do list. So first, in our first two sessions, we learned what is front end, what is full stack development. We made the front end using HTML, CSS, and today we added another front end feature using DOM manipulations. We learned JavaScript also. So all these things we learned in 4 days now, and that is all we have in the front end now. In tomorrow's session, we will be learning what is backend. So moving on to our slides, we have completed setting up our development environment in the first day. We also learned Git and GitHub on the first day. Then we learned what is front-end architecture, what is HTML and CSS. We started coding our HTML, CSS using our to-do list application, for example. And then we learned JavaScript so that we could learn document object model. And today we added a new feature called background switcher to our to-do list application. And that is all we have in the front end. So we are halfway through. We are done with the front end model. Now, in the further sessions, we'll be learning how to code a backend, how to write a server-side code. Because if we see our application right now, we still don't have functionality. We can't click here. If we add some list over here, it will just not work. So we need to incorporate some server-side code so that this list could be loaded uh, depending on what is added to it actually, and we can delete it as well. So all these things are possible in the backend side, and we'll be learning that in from tomorrow's session. If you are feeling that this is a lot to actually digest in an hour session, what you could do is you could head over to Coders Capsule on Medium. This is my personal blogging website where I write all these articles. So all the things I'm performing right now, all these articles are present over here. And if you search for week of web over here, so let's type week of web. And then if I go to my article where I have written about week of web, all the articles are present over here. So in case you missed previous sessions of us, don't worry. All the things are explained in this article. And you can access this by going to Medium and searching for Coders Capsule. And that is all about today's session. So do follow us on our social media handles. For on DSC ACB, we have a Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn as well. You could access all the recorded sessions on our YouTube as well. So a link to it will be in the chat description. And that is all for now. Thank you for joining.